Welcome to Season 2, Episode 16 of the podcast, Ghosts, Demons, and Murder, Oh My. My name is Hayden Crook, and I will be your host for today's episode on the Mogollon Monster and the Crimes of Robert Fisher. Source 1, Arizona Central, Tiffany Acosta. What lurks in the middle of the night along the Mogollon Rim is the stuff of urban legend, folklore, myth, and campfire tale. The Mogollon Monster, named for its association with the Mogollon Rim area, is often described as a large, hairy creature with ape-like features, similar to Bigfoot. Sightings of the Mogollon monster have been reported in the eastern part of Arizona, and people have described a hairy hominid with human-like proportions that emits pungent smells. It is important to note that these claims are a part of local folklore, and there's no scientific evidence to support the existence of such a creature. But if you're camping or hiking on the rim and like to return from your adventures with a tall tale to tell, alliteration is fun, everybody. Tall tale to tell. You really should include Arizona's most famous mythological creature. Here's everything you need to know about the Mogollon monster. What is the Mogollon monster? The Mogollon monster is a legendary creature said to inhabit the Mogollon Rim region in Arizona. Sightings and stories about the Mogollon monster have circulated for decades, but there's no scientific evidence to support its existence, so it's considered a cryptid or urban legend. Similar to, similar to Bigfoot, the Mogollon monster is generally portrayed as a large, hairy, ape-like creature. Those who say they've crossed paths with the beast regularly describe an eerie silence prior to their encounter, said Wesley Treat, author of the book Weird Arizona. What does the Mogollon monster look like? Is It is often said the monster is around 7 to 10 feet tall and possesses a strong muscular build. Treat also mentions reports of a strong, very foul stench, which has been described as that of a dead fish, a skunk with bad body odor, and decaying peat moss. The reclusive creature is described as being at least 7 feet tall, hairless in the face, but otherwise covered with long, thick coat of either dark or reddish brown hair. He travels with a wide, inhuman stride, sometimes leaving footprints measuring 22 inches in length, said Treat. Like many cryptids, and the exact appearance can differ based on individual reports and local legends. What does the Mogollon monster sound like? Reports of the sounds associated with the Mogollon monster vary, but they often include eerie and unusual vocalizations. Reports of the elusive beast involve a piercing, sometimes deafening scream or a howl, unlike that produced by any known wildlife, said Treat. Witnesses have described hearing howls, screams, growls, and other strange noises that don't match known animal sounds. Where does the Mogollon monster live? The Mogollon monster is said to inhabit the Mogollon Rim region in Arizona. Where is the Mogollon Rim in Arizona? The Mogollon Rim is a prominent geological feature located in the central part of Arizona. It runs roughly diagonally across the state from northwest to southeast, stretching 200 miles from Yavapai County to New Mexico, and marks the southern edge of the Colorado Plateau, according to Visit Arizona, Arizona's official website. The rim is known for its dramatic elevation changes and stunning vistas. With steep cliffs dropping down to lower elevations in central and eastern Arizona, the Mogollon Rim is a popular destination for outdoor activities and offers breathtaking views of the surrounding landscapes. How are Mogollon monster encounters described? There have been many reported encounters with the Mogollon monster, and each rendition varies. You can read about many of them in Weird Arizona and Susan A. Farnsworth's book, The Mogollon Monster, Arizona's Bigfoot. According to Treat's book, cryptozoologist Don Davis was one of the first people to report an encounter with the Mogollon monster. Davis said he witnessed the tall, hairy beast during a Boy Scout trip in the mid 1940s when he was about 13 years old. There, standing still less than 4 feet in front of me, was a monster. Like a man, the creature was huge. Its eyes were deep set and hard to see, but they seemed expressionless. His chest, shoulders, and arms were massive, especially the upper arms, easily upwards of 6 inches in diameter, perhaps much, much more, said Davis. An even earlier report from a 1903 edition of the Arizona Republican describes a tourist named I.W. Stevens who was visiting Arizona. Stevens recounts his confrontation with what he referred to as the wild man of the rocks. Though his encounter occurred further north, within the Grand Canyon, the story may be one of the earliest written records of Mogollon monster sighting. All right. Source 2, notoriouslymorbid.com. The Mogollon Rim, a majestic mountain range that graces central Arizona, is renowned for its breathtaking natural beauty and serves as a magnet for outdoor enthusiasts. This region, teeming with avid hikers, campers, and explorers, is also a repository of enigmatic stories and age old legends that enthralled both local and wanderers. Among these narratives, the captivating tale of the Mogollon Monster takes center stage. The enigmatic Mogollon Monster. The Mogollon Monster, a cryptid whose existence remains rooted in folklore and myth rather than empirical evidence, is shrouded in intrigue. This elusive entity, described as a colossal hairy and ape-like being, is believed to roam the dense woodlands of the Mogollon Rim. Portrayed as a solitary and mysterious figure, it's often associated with tales of encounters with unsuspecting hikers and campers. The accounts of the Mogollon Monster are numerous, yet genuine encounters remain veiled in ambiguity and skepticism. The earliest documented sighting harks back to the 1880s when a group of cowboys found themselves facing an unexpected and horrifying confrontation with a large, hairy creature during a camping trip. Although they managed to ward off the creature, the ordeal left them profoundly unsettled. In 1960, another enigmatic episode unfolded when a man named Fred Ohlenberger was driving through the Mogollon Rim. In the middle of the road, he encountered an imposing, shaggy figure. Intrigued and startled, Ohlenberger approached the creature to investigate, only to see it vanish into the woods before he could get a close look. Over the years, various other reports of Mogollon monster sightings have surfaced, often likening the creature to the legendary Bigfoot, featuring a towering, hairy presence with long limbs. Despite the abundance of anecdotes, none of these encounters have received scientific validation. The Mogollon monster's existence, fact or fiction. The debate surrounding the authenticity of the Mogollon monster persists, with no definitive resolution in sight. Scientific evidence substantiating its existence is notably lacking. Yet the tales of this elusive creature continue to kindle the flame of the legend. Some speculate if the Mogollon monster were indeed real, it might belong to the category of relict hominis or hominins, undiscovered human relatives who have endured the test of time. Reports of relict hominins have emerged globally, further contributing to the enigma. For others, the Mogollon monster represents a cryptid, a creature believed to exist but awaiting empirical verification. Cryptids like Bigfoot, the Loch Ness monster, and the chupacabra have long captivated the public's imagination. Despite skepticism from the scientific community, as such, the Mogollon monster, regardless of its factual basis, has emerged as an enduring figure in folklore, seizing the attention of enthusiasts and inspiring conversations about the unresolved mysteries that continue to bewitch us. Let's see. For those who harbor a fascination for the mysterious, notoriously morbid offers a makeup experience that mirrors the intrigue. The collection State of Fear honors the mystique surrounding the Mogollon monster. Notoriously Morbid's makeup products empower individuals to express themselves through makeup. Our uniquely named products and shades serve as a canvas for self expression and for exploring the shadows within. Interesting. I didn't notice that when I was putting the episode together. So I guess a little plug for them for their makeup line. That sounds cool though. That's a makeup collection around cryptids and monsters. So yeah, go ahead and check that out. Bad of me not to double check that, fact check any of that, but yeah. In closing, the legend of the Mogollon monster, while cocooned in enigma and uncertainty, underscores the timeless fascination of the unknown. Whether this cryptid is a relic from a bygone era or a figment of folklore, it remains a captivating subject beckoning the curious. Just as the Mogollon monster symbolizes the allure of the enigmatic, the realm of cosmetics offers a medium to explore the enigma, express the cryptic, and embrace the mysteries that surround us. In conclusion, The legend of the Mogollon monster is a compelling and enduring narrative akin to the enigmas and mysteries of life that persist in fascinating us. Whether one subscribes to the belief in the existence of such cryptids or not, they continue to embody the appeal of the unknown and the limitless curiosity of the human spirit. All right, source three is Reddit. I found some stories that people shared when I was looking up this topic. Let's see. So the user is Quarks PPT. They said, I grew up going to a church camp between Sholo and Pinetop Lakeside. Then I worked there in my high school years as a dishwasher during summers and winters. I remember the counselors and staff scaring us with ghost stories and such, especially the Mogollon monster. There was a long history of staff who had experiences but always laughed it off. Well, I was a punk rock metalhead stoner in high school and still went to this Christian camp every year because it was my upbringing. Dark nights in the cabins, the counselors would tell scary stories about the Mogollon monster, and we other staff would go into the woods just outside the cabin with molded Bigfoot prints and one of those little three-clawed gardening tools. At the right moment, we would scrape the outside of the cabin and sneak away, and the kids could see all the evidence the next day, or if they were brave enough to go out in the dark right away. Anyway, sometimes during work breaks, I would sneak away to the woods down the cliff from an amazingly beautiful overview from the Mogollon Rim, just a couple hundred yards away from our staff cabins to smoke cigarettes and eventually weed too. I made friends with a couple of honestly noob stoners, and we made our way down the cliff. It's hard to qualify, but there was a faint but distinct smell, a soft rustle of leaves, and a slight shift of shadow of something way taller than us behind a nearby tree. They caught all our attentions. We weren't scared. We got the hell back up that cliff really quick. LOL. This was in the 80s, and I still have fond memories of that camp and the people and monsters that I met. General Blumpkin. My wife had a similar experience in that area at a church camp in the earlier 2000s, maybe late 90s when she was a kid. They saw a very large dead creature up in a tree. It was at the very top, but she told me it looked like a dead Bigfoot. It had hands like humans and really long, thick fur. I'm not sure what it was, and she didn't know either. Her sister and a friend both saw it as well, and it creeped them both out so much they just ran back to camp. Maybe it was an elk. Somehow a mountain lion got up there, or a hunter hoisted it up to get it. I don't. All right. Now for my grandpa's Bigfoot story. I'm trying to remember like the exact details, but basically, I think I don't remember if he had him and his friend were out cutting wood, I believe, one like fall winter. Um, and they brought a dog, and it was really quiet. It was out in the woods near my hometown, in the area of the Mogollon Rim, basically. Um, anyway, he said it was quiet, didn't really bother him, but then like he got like an eerie feeling, and then his dog like started growling and like barking and getting kind of upset, seemed freaked out, so he started getting freaked out. Anyway, I don't remember what happened, but I think he let the dog loose and it went behind like some shrubs or something, like a thicket of trees, and then like it like got scared and ran back to him and he went over there and there was like a huge like a bed, looked like an animal had made a bed out of like pine needles and just brush and stuff. But he said it looked like a big animal, like a big person, like had laid down in it. I think he said too, like 7 to 10 feet tall, probably. But yeah, that was his Bigfoot story. So my grandpa believes in Bigfoot, Mogollon monster, whatever you call it. I remember my mom telling me that story as a kid, and I just always remember that kind of stuck with me. Like, he was out in the woods. Even his dog got scared, and then he just found the big pile of like brush and pine needles that like an animal made, like basically like a nest type of thing to lay down on. Okay, and I'm from Arizona. Obviously, if you couldn't tell, so for this episode for this week, I wanted to focus on some Arizona stuff and then tie in some Arizona true crime. This guy, pretty sure he had The Robert Fisher, I'm pretty sure he had a cabin like in Forest Lakes, which was like 30 minutes away from my hometown. Pretty sure he had a hometown or a not a hometown. He had a like a second cabin. So we're gonna switch over to that now. Source 4 is FBI.gov. Former 10 most wanted fugitive number 475. Robert William Fisher is wanted for killing his wife and two young children and then blowing up the house in which they all lived in Scottsdale, Arizona. He was removed from the list November 3rd, 2021, after it was determined that he no longer fit the criteria for inclusion on the list. Source 5, Arizona Central, Sam Kamak. Robert Fisher has been one of Arizona's most infamous criminal suspects after police believed he murdered his wife and two children before blowing up their Scottsdale home in the early outs, and he's never been found. Fisher gained infamy in 2001 when he went on the run after the death of his family. Police say he murdered his 30-year-old wife Mary and two children, 12-year-old Brittany and 10-year-old Bobby, in 2001 before rigging his house in Scottsdale to explode. All three of the victims had their throats slashed. Mary had a bullet in her head. Here's what you know about Fisher, whose whereabouts remain unknown. Where did Fisher go? Fisher was last seen leaving an ATM in April 2001, the night before his family was killed. He was driving his wife's Toyota 4Runner, which was found 10 days later in a remote part of the Tonto National Forest east of Payson. See, Payson Forest. I knew I had it right. See, he was hiding out over there. Maybe not a cabin over there, but he was hiding out allegedly east of Payson along with his dog, who was located beneath the truck. But that was the last time he was ever seen. A manhunt failed to turn up any sign of him. Law enforcement was left with little to go on, and whether he is alive or dead remains unknown. And fun fact, my aunt, I'm trying to remember how long ago it was, but my aunt, I think they were at Walmart in Payson, they were somewhere over in that area, and they could have sworn like they saw Robert Fisher. It's just crazy, like like something like that happens, and then that person like is supposedly like in your neck of the woods, like your part of town. Like it's interesting. How long did law enforcement search for him? For nearly 2 decades, he was on the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list, but he was removed in 2021, even though he still remained at large at the time. Federal agents explained that the list only includes wanted individuals who may be caught due to extra publicity. They determined that was a lost cause 3 years ago. Because the extensive publicity Fisher's case received during its nearly 20 years on the list has not resulted in his successful location and or capture, the case no longer fulfills that requirement, the FBI said in a 2021 statement to the Arizona Republic. 2 decades and many false sightings later, the Scottsdale police detective who was in charge of the case in 2021, John Heinzelman, still received 2 to 3 tips a week about Fisher, or about 100 leads a year. What do people think happened to Fisher? There are three main theories about what happened to Fisher. One, he's living somewhere under an assumed identity. Two, he died by suicide and his body has not been found. Or three, he was on the run for weeks or years but has since died and his remains have not been found or identified. But the case remains a mystery. There have been no leads regarding his whereabouts released to the public as of August 2024. Fisher would now be 62 years old if he is still alive. Source 6, ArizonaFamily.com, Brianna Whitney. A new podcast has uncovered new clues in the infamous unsolved case of Robert Fisher, the Scottsdale father believed to have murdered his family before their house exploded back in 2001. For the first time, we're getting a look at what he found and the new reward for information that leads to the arrest of one of the valley's most elusive fugitives. It's a case that's drawn attention for decades, including that of our True Crime Arizona team with the documentary Finding Robert Fisher in 2022. Now we're working with the iHeart Media team, and their new podcast, Missing in Arizona, dives deeper into this case than ever before. We found new witnesses who changed the timeline entirely, said John Waltzak, journalist and host of the new podcast. He's conducted more than 60 interviews over 2 years. What we've known up to now is that Fisher allegedly slit the throats of his daughter Brittany, his son Bobby, and his wife Mary. He also repeatedly shot Mary in the head. Hold on, water break. He's seen on camera at the ATM down the street in Scottsdale at 10:42 p.m. on April 9, 2001 with his wife's 4Runner. Police believe Robert cut a gas line in the home and lit a candle. The house exploded into flames the next morning around 8:40. Mary's car was found 10 days later in the woods of Young, Arizona, about 24 miles southeast of Payson, with Robert's dog found alive with it, but there was no sign of Robert there or ever again. There's been this question: did he flee after the ATM? Did he go home? Did he have a 10 to 12 hour head start on law enforcement? Said Waltzak. What we found is we found two new witnesses who saw Mary's SUV at 3:30 and one at 5:30 at the Fisher house. That confirms he definitely did not flee. He definitely went home, and in fact, he was still home several hours later. With that information, Robert may have only had a few hours ahead of police before the explosion. Let's see. Today, I'm announcing that I'm funding a $10,000 reward with silent witness. They're kicking in 2,000, Waltbeck said. They also used forensic artists to create new age progression photos of Robert, the first time that's been done in 8 years. Detectives working on this case have been split on whether they believe Robert is dead or alive. After 2 years of researching this, I very strongly think that Robert Fisher is alive, and I'm working this hard because I want to find him, said Waltzak. I think that Robert Fisher planned this out. I think that he left the SUV in the forest as a diversion and that somebody drove him out of there and he escaped. The first episode of Missing in Arizona is already out wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, with a new episode releasing each week for 16 weeks. True Crimes correspondent Brianna Whitney's interview with John Waltzak on the podcast will be coming out next month. And source 7 is Reddit. Yummy Crayons 91 said, Robert Fisher, the real Mogollon monster. I still remember camping in the woods nearby with scouts during the manhunt. No idea what happened to him, but for there to be zero trace of this guy after 20 years is both equally bizarre and oddly impressive. Bitterhole7290 said, I think his military and outdoorsman experiences were way overblown personally. I think he originally did set out to go on the run, hence why he took the dog at first, but realized for whatever reason it wouldn't work, and he abandoned the dog and killed himself way out in the brush. With animals going after the bones, we will probably never know without some luck. Yummy Crayons 91 replied, I did read some recently divulged details about the case. Apparently, during the initial search, law enforcement either didn't have permission or didn't bother to reach the nearby Fort Apache reservations. Supposedly, there was a set of footprints leading to the boundary from the area his car was found. The Tonto National Forest area, where his car was found, is remote, but during summer camping season and the later hunting season would have been pretty heavily trafficked, especially hunting season with people going off established trails, roads, looking for signs of wildlife. Now, if he had crossed into tribal land, the very remote area as well, but only a tiny amount of people, if any, in the area camping, hunting, and a big chunk of the land was burned in the rodeo Chetascau fire the next year, which, side note, I was a part of, I lived through. That was that was a crazy time. Continues, personally, I think he left his car and dog where it was found, crossed into tribal lands nearby, and either died of exposure or killed himself. Animals scattered the remains, and any evidence left was burned to a crisp in the rodeo Chetascau fire 1 year later. There's also like a little Fox 10, our local news station. I'm going to include that in the show notes that you can check out. But that's it for today's episode. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Ghosts, Demons, and Murder. Oh my. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast so you can get all the updates, information, and content that will be uploaded. Thank you for the support and for listening to my podcast. Episode ideas and recommendations are welcome. And as always, I can be reached via email at haydencrook8@gmail.com.